Summer is back here, and it's a holiday season once again. And as a summer special, I bring you some more water ghost stories from Korea. I already talked about water ghosts, or 물귀신 as we call it, in some of my early episodes. If you missed them, the link's in the description and at the corner of the screen. Water is the bringer of both life and death, and for that reason, it's not unique to find various paranormal beings around the world that signify the danger of water. Various water nymphs in Europe, Japanese kappa or Mexican La Llorona comes to my mind. But while these tend to be more specific individual creatures, in Korea the concept of water ghost is more general and broad. Basically, anybody who drowns can turn into a water ghost, trapped in the body of water you are drowned in and constantly looking to pull others down the water to make them meet the same fate. I think one reason for the prevalence or presence of water ghosts in Korea is its nature itself. The country is rich of various streams, rivers, lakes, and sea, but due to its mountainous terrain, waters can run much deeper and rougher than they first seem, with hidden whirlpools and deep water holes. On top of that, temperamental summer downpour can turn these streams and rivers all-powerful death trap in a matter of minutes. Even with advanced warning system today, it is not uncommon to have drown accidents every year, especially in summer holiday season. Stories of water ghosts up and down the country should be human reaction to this unexpected force of nature and serve as a cautionary tales. So, here are 7 allegedly true stories about water ghosts in Korea, in its rivers, streams, and sea. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by your host, Anthony. Jeju Island is the biggest island of Korea, sits on the southern end of the country. The semi-tropical island has exotic charm and strong culture of its own, and today is a popular holiday destination. Jeju is a volcanic island, and a land largely made with volcanic basalt rocks lets rain fall straight through. Even torrential summer downpour wouldn't have much impact other than creating temporary stream that pours into the sea. What's left of these streams after the rain are occasional ponds or waterhole on the water path, called so in Jeju dialect. It used to be the valuable source of water for the locals. The Black So is one such example. The reason it was named thus is because it is so deep that the water taking on the black hue. The rumor goes that many have drowned there, and the locals consider it a spooky spot. It happened when I was 13. At the time, people often had a harvested barley let dry on the road. I and my uncle were out to do the job then. It was a sweaty work, and usually we would go find a sore pond nearby to wash ourselves off. We found a spot on the downstream of the Black So, and my uncle would recount that I suddenly disappeared without a word. My own memory ends with reaching the water and swimming with uncle. When my uncle managed to find me, I was standing in front of Black So. He called out my name, to which I turned around, with eyes rolled backwards. But I myself remember none of that. My grandmother took me to a local shaman, and the shaman said a ghost of a young woman was hanging around me. The ghost spoke of a story through the shaman, that she herself was a drowned victim lured by a water ghost of Black So. So far, 99 people drowned in Black So, and with one more victim, all the water ghosts stuck in Black So would get finally free. And I was to be that 100th victim. That would have made me repeat the same doomed existence, stuck in the black water until I managed to fulfill another 100 victims. The water ghosts were angry and desperate because they could not even come to feast on the memorial rituals in their honor, having bound the water they perished in. It took several shamanic rituals and offerings to get me free of the ghost. I don't know if it were really thanks to that, but at least I'm still alive now. Today, Black Soul had shrunk a lot as the water table went down with so much aquifer development. Yet it still happened recently that a female hiker was lured to the pond by some woman's crying. When she snapped out because of her shoes coming off, she found herself just about to walk over the cliff and into the pond. A few years ago, I went to Gyeongpodae Beach with 2 friends. One of them also brought his 4-year-old nephew. The main beach was so crowded, so we walked further up north to find a quiet spot. So us 4 spent a wonderful time in the water when suddenly torrential showers started pouring down. I grabbed the 4-year-old to take him back to the beach, but he wouldn't budge. I was so surprised, as it didn't feel by any means like a 4-year-old boy. The boy was mumbling something to himself. I asked what he was saying, and he replied, "Jinjin wants to come with me." I asked who that was, and he said, "Jinjin lives under the water." You wouldn't understand the sudden chills the most unexpected situation brought me. The shower was getting denser by seconds. I kept struggling to pull the boy away. Only then I realized we were so deep in the water, enough for my feet didn't touch the ground. As I couldn't swim, actually only one friend, the uncle of the boy, could swim, my effort turned more floundering about. I could see the beach getting empty quickly as the other people escaped from the downpour. The guy with the red cap, guess he was a lifeguard, only shouted at us to come out quickly, clearly not noticing something wasn't right here. The boy's uncle joined in, but it still wouldn't do. I told him to get out and get the lifeguard, but he said he couldn't, as he got a cramp. We somehow managed back on the beach after a good 10 minutes. Only then the boy's uncle told us, as his nephew kept talking about Jinjin in the water, he dived under the water to see if he meant some sort of fish or something. What he saw was a drowned body of a young boy. And the moment he realized it, he got a cramp. We told the lifeguard that there was a boy under the water, but clearly he wasn't taking us seriously. Back in the lodging, we told the host what happened. She then told us some time ago a mother tried to drown herself and a young son in that beach, only to survive alone herself and lose her son, whose body was never found. It goes without saying I never returned to that beach to this day. For a time I was all for free diving, enough to earn myself level 3 certificate. If you don't know what free diving is, it's basically an endurance sport that tests your body how deep and long you can go underwater without oxygen. Last summer I went to Bohol, Philippines for holiday and training. Its deep sea water is a place made in heaven for both free and scuba divers. Freediving is a risky activity, and you are normally supposed to have a company to check each other's condition and make sure to follow safety procedures. But on the day of arrival, the weather was so beautiful and I felt so eager that I went diving without a company. My maximum record is 60 meter deep, and I just thought to go 30 meter down as a first day's warm-up. So I checked myself at a 30-meter deep point and was heading back up when I felt my sight closing in and spinning. It was the sign that I was just a step away from passing out. Fainting at depth means a sure death, so I kicked my fins hard to go up to the surface. Diving fins for freedivers are much wider, more difficult to maneuver, but allow fast move. And yet, despite of my best effort, I felt myself sinking down. As the last-ditch effort, I undid the weight buckle. Without the weight, there was a high chance that I float up to the surface even while unconscious. And right that moment, I saw a few scuba divers in the vicinity. One of them approached me and handed over the oxygen regulator. I instinctively stretched out to take it, but I stopped, seeing the diver's creepy smile. Actually, a freediver shouldn't take oxygen regulator even in the emergency because the difference in the air pressure could crush the lung. I shook my head, but now he pushed the regulator to my mouth while the other diver joined to hold my fins and drag me down deeper. I kicked and fought for God knows how long. When I woke up, somebody was slapping me to wake up. Thankfully, I was on the surface, and instructors around found and rescued me back to the shore. Thank God I managed to drop the weight before too late. As soon as I calmed myself down and recovered a bit, I complained to the instructors that there was some scuba divers who tried to drown me. But the instructor denied there was anybody else around, that he'd been watching and waiting for me the whole time and didn't see anybody. Might it have been my hallucination before I passed out? But one undeniable fact is the log my diving watch recorded, that I swam up from the 30-meter deep mark and then sank back and floated back again several times. Without the weight and conscious effort, it was impossible that I moved down at all. And what about all the scratch marks on my fins, as if from a sharp object like a knife? That was the last time I went freediving. One summer night, my wife suggested go for a walk to the nearby beach. Not exactly near, to be honest, but doable. Neither of us like crowded places and usually avoid going there in the peak season, but it would be not too bad late in the evening. So we three, including our 6-month-old baby daughter, hit the road, and indeed the beach was largely empty. We leisurely walked along the beach until we met a noodle soup vendor. Well, I love noodle soups, but we realized we left our wallet in the car, and after a short and typical back and forth of a married couple, you go to the car, no you go, I'll wait with the baby here, we could go together, it's too hot carrying the baby, etc. Finally, my wife agreed to go to fetch the wallet while I waited on the beach with the baby daughter in my arms. And that's where my memory stops. The next thing I remember is that I got around with a loud cry of my baby daughter and found myself in the sea, knee-deep, still holding baby in my arms. Now, my daughter was one calm, easygoing baby. One would hardly ever hear her crying, let alone screaming like then. Even today, I'm not sure what could have triggered her like that when she herself was still well above the water. Anyway, still feeling very confused, I hurried myself back towards the sandy beach. But just a few steps away, something gripped around my foot. I could not struggle too much for the fear of falling down and dropping my baby. I was stuck there in awkward position in the shallow water, cold sweat dripping down on my back. Then I saw my wife coming. It's no joke, it felt like I saw a halo around her at that moment. I called and waved for her desperately, and she came to help me out, and whatever was gripping my foot finally let me go. And in the sea wind blowing in my ear, I think I heard somebody saying, "What a good girl. Consider yourself lucky," in sneering tone. My wife didn't really believe my account. Honestly, I can't believe it myself either, but I still sweat to think what might have happened if it were not for my daughter's timely crying. In the southeastern province of Yeongdeok is a river called Oshipcheon, the river of 50 twists and turns. I spent my first 6 years in the village by Oshipcheon under my grandparents' care. It was all around unremarkable country village, but with a bridge over the river and a low cliff that leads to the calmer corner of the river, it attracted some holiday makers in summer. What the visitors didn't know was that calm-looking section of the water was actually much deeper than it looked. There definitely have been fatal accidents occasionally, if not every summer. And 10 years ago, I was a uni student in Daegu City. A friend got his driving license, the first among my gang of friends, and we excitedly discussed about going away somewhere for summer holiday. But poor 20-year-old students had no budget, and upon my suggestion, we headed to my grandparents' village in Yeongdeok. Grandparents were happy to see me, and other village elders also welcomed us, that a lot of youngsters brought back some energy to the otherwise sleepy village. We took over a corner of the bridge over the river and enjoyed a drink with the village elders and all. As the dusk set, the villagers left first, but we carried on. It was all fine. But during the course of flowing drink and silly chit-chats, there were abrupt breaks of the conversation stopping and awkward emptying the glasses in silence. We decided finally to wrap up when it turned midnight. While packing and cleaning things up, we heard splashing noise. Seeing us looking around to find out what it was, a friend said, "So, you hear that now too?" According to him, the splash of something falling into the water was heard throughout the night in intervals, and it was that noise that had been disturbing the flow of our conversation. I thought it was a bad omen and hurried others to pack up, but my friends seemed to get only more curious and set themselves back down. And not long after, another splash. We all looked out the direction of the noise. It was towards the cliff down to the calm but deep water I mentioned earlier. And on that cliff, we saw a shadow moving in the moonlight before it jumped off from the cliff and into the water with a splash. And that's the last thing I remember. When I got around again, I was in the water waist deep and a friend was dragging me out by the neck. Later he explained, shortly after we all witnessed a shadow figure jumping in, I and other two started running into the river like zombies. The other two barely managed to stop and pull us out. There seemed to be something left the two didn't tell the rest of us, but we were all too spooked to talk about it anymore. And that was the last time I returned to Yeongdeok. Being too busy with work and life has been my excuse, but deep down I know that summer night's incident 10 years ago has played a role. I still keep contacts with some of the mates, but they too still just shake their heads in silence whenever I try to bring the night up. I wonder if the green water under the cliff is still so deep, and if the shadow person might still keep jumping into it. It's already 9 years ago. I and my gang of friends turned just 19, and one of them decided to take the military service first. Before he went on the service, we wanted to make one last trip together and headed off to the valley of stream somewhere in Hongcheon-gun, Gangwon-do. We arrived still in the morning, but the valley was already quite crowded, being the peak of the summer holiday season. We walked further upstream looking for a quieter spot and ended up deep in the forest. We put up the tent, barbecued some pork belly, and played in the water. As the dusk setting in, one of the gang insisted we should play in the water more before it gets totally dark. The rest of us suggested we could do that in the morning again, but he seemed reluctant and went out to the stream by himself. We thought he should come back soon and carried on with our drink. But he didn't come back until it got totally dark. We got worried and spread it out to search for him. About 10 minutes later, we heard another friend calling out for us. And when we gathered back, we found a friend who had gone missing, all wet and shivering with blue lips. We gave all our blankets and jackets to wrap him up and asked what had happened. From what he recounted, he met a young woman by the water who claimed to have sprained her ankle. She asked a friend to help her back to her friends, which he could not turn down. So he carried her on his back and walked along the water to the direction she gave, until she said she'd like to wash her feet in the stream before going back. Friend walked into the water with her still on the back, but suddenly his foot slipped and fell into the water head over heels. While floundering in the water himself, he still worried about the woman and looked around, but could not find her. Fearing she might have gone under the water, he looked down and saw her there, pulling his feet down. Fortunately, the other friend heard him screaming in time and pulled him out of the water. But this other friend's expression turned awkward towards the end of the recount. In the end, with a husky voice, he said, "What are you talking about? When I found you, you weren't trying to get out of the water. You were walking into the water like a madman." We left the valley as soon as the dawn broke. Summer 1998. It was just a couple of months before the start of military service. I was determined to go out and about to enjoy myself to the max, as if the world were to end soon. Yet my choice for the summer holiday was still Mount Chiri, as it had been for prior 5 years. But that year, just a week before my holiday there, July 31st it was, I still can't forget. There was a catastrophic torrential downpour overnight, which killed 99 people in Chiri Mountain alone. Scenic stream in the mountain valley can turn into a death trap in a torrential rain. I know it very well, as I experienced myself before. But came the day of the holiday, my mind put the tragedy aside already and got all excited again, until I and my gang arrived at the camping ground. Usually it would have been packed in summer peak, but there were just 3 tents occupying the eerily empty ground. But then again, that also meant the stream was not crowded and water clearer. By then there was no sign of tragedy visible anywhere, and the weather was just sunny and hot, and we set out to have fun in any case. We got quite well acquainted to the handful of campers because there were just so few of them. One of them was an old man who we nicknamed as the leader, as in cult leader, because he fashioned long white hair and carried a certain charismatic aura despite his humble attire. He said he was a traditional painter and usually spent every summer alone in the mountain. Indeed, in his big tent were all sorts of household ready, and we did owe him a lot because we, as most carefree young boys usually are, were woefully underprepared. On the second night, we shared a drink with the leader. He praised the beauty of this section of Mount Chiri, but also recounted the misery of the recent disaster there too, that in that stream alone were not a small number gone missing or perished. Before he left, he once again emphasized to us not to get into the water after dark. But boys will be boys. We were soon out the stream. I brought then a big swim ring with me, and on the way to the stream came across several 3-4 meter long bamboo sticks stuck on the ground. Odd, but I figured it would make a good punting stick for my swim ring, and took one out. After about 20 minutes in the water, swimming and diving, we started to feel a bit too chilly. While my friends retreated onto a rock, settled down for more drinks, I took out my swim ring and a bamboo stick. I carefully positioned myself on the ring so that my body didn't touch the cold water apart from my bum, and just floated away. Friends laughed that I looked like a little kid, but what did I care? It was comfortable and almost romantic to gently float around under the starry night sky. And then, when I looked around again, I realized I had indeed floated quite a bit away. My friends' voices could be heard only far and broken, hidden behind rocks and masked by the noise of the stream. I don't know why, and I never considered myself a chicken, but suddenly all my romantic sentiment dissipated, and I panicked. In this water, so many lives were perished just a few days prior after all. Crystal clear and twinkling water under the daylight now looked a dark void that would suck me in any minute. I carefully maneuvered myself to up and more alert position without touching the water, and realized one more odd thing. I was floating upwards against the flow. It was as if a force was sucking me into the deepest center of the pool. I didn't want to make a fuss, and yet couldn't dare to jump into the water to swim out either. Then I remembered I still was holding the bamboo stick. I should be able to punt my way out, I thought. Water was about 3 meters deep, and the stick should be just about long enough for the task. Indeed, I sensed the stick hitting the bottom and focused to push myself to the shore. But when I looked around again to check my progress, I found myself still in the middle of the deep water. I punted even harder, this time not losing the sight of the surrounding, and found no matter how hard I tried, I seemed to be merely floating a circle in the middle of the pool, as under a gravitational pull. Or was it more like something catching on the bamboo stick under the water and pivoting me around, waiting for me to get impatient and jump into the water? I panicked even more and wasn't sure what to do anymore. Should I shout for help? Should I let go of the bamboo stick? But then what afterwards? And just then, I heard my friends calling for me. It sounded so far and echoey, but it encouraged me enough to give myself one good push and let go of the bamboo stick. And just like that, I was back on the normal flow of the stream and in the matter of 10 seconds back on the shore. Friends asked me where I had been and said to join the drink. Me in more usual situation would have bragged about the adventure just now, but I was so stunned that all I wanted was to get away from the water. I retreated to our tent, and a friend later retrieved my swim ring. Morning came, and friends were presently playing cards to decide who to do all the dirty dishes. I myself was still deep in thoughts about what happened the night before. Why did it happen then, and just to me, when we were all fine playing in the same spot day and night? Then the leader came over to our tent. He was holding a long bamboo stick in his hand and seemed very angry. "Who touched this?" he berated that they found it floating in the stream. "We shouldn't have touched it. Didn't he tell us not to go into the water at night?" His unusual outburst made me think that there was something more that he wasn't telling me. I waited till he calmed down a bit and told him what I experienced the night before. Leader's face went pale and fell into silence a while, and finally explained what the bamboo stick was. That it was used to search for dead bodies in the aftermath of the incident a week prior. While the water was still high and rough, the long sticks were used to probe behind bushes and between rocks. "Poor souls, poor souls." He ended his story with repeating it in a low voice. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Are you going away for summer holiday somewhere? I'm not much of a summer holiday person and just staying in the city myself, but if you are going to a river or beach, I hope you remember some of today's stories and stay alert. I don't know if water ghost figure is as prevalent in your culture too or not, but it's just a fact that water can be unpredictable. I'm going to continue with water ghost stories for one more week as the summer special, so stay tuned. If you enjoyed my work, please leave me a comment and a like, and please consider subscribing to my channel. If you'd support it more directly, I also have Buy Me a Coffee account, the link's in the description. Buy Me a Coffee supporters will have an access to my new videos a week before the others. I'll come back next Sunday. Stay safe and take care.